Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our second Secret Sunday session for 2021. Thank you all for attending today. Today, I am joined by Serena from Breaking Taboo, and we are very grateful to have her on today, and we're going to be talking about all things taboo. So basically, just to start off, who are you and what is Breaking Taboo?
Well, my name is Serena, Serena Sun. Some people also know me as Serena Hope Sun, Hope, H-O-P being my middle name, which is pretty interesting, I think, because my life revolves a lot around the concept of hope and mental health and suicide prevention and helping people basically get access to the tools that can save lives and promote their own mental health well-being as well as others' mental health around them. So I run an organization called Breaking Taboo, and what Breaking Taboo is about is literally just that. Our mission is to break the taboo around mental health awareness and suicide prevention. So we educate people, we provide accessible education, we inspire people to have open conversations about this subject, and we encourage people to get help, and we also provide them with the resources and the tools that they need to do in order to point them to the right direction for them to get help. So we're constantly coming out with articles and medias and our own podcasts around the subject, and we're working on a documentary, and we have mental health programs implemented in school systems, and it's just like constantly working on this. And we're also really big on social media. So we have a pretty good social media following, and we do a lot of mental health education and breaking taboo around in social media as well. So yeah, so to inspire people to constantly have hope and, get out there and get help for the things that they need help with. And let's face it, we all need help with something, so I always say everyone out there should get some therapy, personal development. Like, we all need to be working on ourselves. So
Awesome.
yeah.
That's great, so much. So before we dig into some of the more, I guess, vulnerable and interesting questions, I want to ask, why did you start this organization?
Yeah, so that's a question I get asked a lot, because I guess first of all, not a lot of people start nonprofits. I guess the appeal isn't as big for a lot of people as, I guess, a for-profit. And a lot of people shy away from, really hard subjects such as mental health, and then especially getting really deep into it, like darker subjects such as suicide and suicide prevention. So yeah, people are constantly like, wow, like, what made you start this? And of course, there's somewhat of a story behind it, but mostly it's circumstance. So I come from a background of psychology and film. So I am both in front of the camera and behind the cameras. I've worked on multiple sets. I have both a creative side, the filmmaking side, writing side and all that, and also my psychology and entrepreneur side. So Breaking Taboo kind of came, I guess, organically and naturally as a result of me putting all of my background into a use for the betterment of society. But what really sparked that was honestly losing a lot of friends, or enough friends, to suicide. So what sparked the actual concept of Breaking Taboo was the last time where I lost a friend of mine that I'd known for many years to suicide. I was just thinking to myself, why does this keep happening? We have the tools out there, we have the education around this, like there are initiatives for suicide prevention, but why are the numbers constantly climbing every single year? Throughout history, it has not declined. And that was ridiculous to me, because the fact is, over 90% of suicides are preventable. And that's because most suicides have an underlying mental health condition, with depression being the leading one. And only half of mental health conditions are actually get treatments, throughout their lifetimes. And 1 in every 4 people have a mental health condition. And it actually could be very underreported because so many people don't seek therapy. So all of this made me realize the impact of the taboo around the subject. And then what I realized, my light bulb moment, was when I realized that it's not necessarily that we don't have the education or the psychology courses or, the organizations or initiatives to prevent suicide. It's that people literally don't go after that. They don't get the help. They don't talk about it. They don't know when to help someone else. They don't know that someone is suffering from a mental health condition. They don't know when their friend or neighbor or relative is depressed, and that person who is experiencing it is so bottled up in shame and guilt and all of these, again, taboo things, that they're afflicted by the taboo, and they don't seek the help that could save their lives. So I realized that it was really the root cause. In order to fix this problem, we need to concentrate on the root cause, and the root cause is the taboo involved. And that really needs to be an entire shift in society. So it's a much larger problem than just, okay, this is what we do to prevent suicide. Like it's much larger than that. And once I came to that realization, that's kind of what sparked me on this journey. And it's just grown from there, and it's grown tremendously. And there's so much more growth that we have to do because it's a huge topic. So yeah.
Wow. It's interesting when you mention the statistics. Are they constantly being updated in terms of suicide and that?
They are, yeah. So if you go on the census and you look at death rates and whatnot, then you will definitely see, like, it's reported annually, the amount of people that die from whatever causes. And the reality is the suicide rates could in fact be a lot higher because a lot of it goes unreported, because sometimes you don't know, if it is in fact suicide or not. So it really could be a lot more than what is actually recorded. But, statistics are pretty dire. I mean, there are more suicides that happen than homicides. There are more people in history that have died from suicide than wars, natural disasters, and homicides combined. So it's huge. It's, I think, the third leading cause, I think, because that one does change, but like the third leading cause of death for adolescents up to age 24, I believe. So yeah, so it's huge. I mean, it's grown since the year 2000 in adolescent girls. It's grown 30%.
Wow. Why do you think it's grown 30% in adolescent girls in the last, years, and it's still continuing to grow?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, again, I would say a lot of it is a taboo. So hopefully, if we are able to shift this, if we are able to successfully do this work, the intention is to see it not grow, is to see it level off, and then hopefully go down, which we have not seen. Like, it's been like this, and what we want to do is have it go like this and then go like this, right? So that's the intention. So I'd say a big part is the taboo and the shame associated, and then I think there's theories around this. One theory is that the human population is larger in general, right? Like, there are more and more adolescent numbers of people. So yes, that is true. So that could be a part of the reason as well. But then, there are so many different reasons. I mean, adolescents these days are really disconnected from a lot of different things. Like I feel like a lot of adolescents feel lost and hopeless and just are lacking guidance. I just, like, to be honest, there is no straightforward answer to this. And that is a great question. Like, why is the reason why is it that there are so many young girls, like such an increase in the young girls? But I would say I think it makes sense to think that a lot of it would have to do with the standards of society. perhaps body image issues, as well as the comparison. And there's such a pressure in society to perform a certain way, and people see that now. They're exposed to it in social media and the internet and all sorts of things, and TV shows, like this lifestyle type of even lifestyle Instagrams, like they do extremely well because people are constantly wanting this perfect image. And I know it's happened all throughout society, all throughout history, but I feel like, even more so, people just have that constant mindset of comparing themselves to others. And then the disconnect I was talking about with the families, not having the support. There's not enough guidance counselors and therapists in schools, for adolescents. Like, where do they look toward? What do they do? There's, again, the taboo around it. And when you're in that stage of your life, I don't know if you remember what it's like to be a teenager, but I definitely do. And I definitely remember struggling with my feelings and my emotions when I was a teenager. And I totally know what it's like to have zero guidance and no mentorship and feel like you can't talk to anyone about it. And like, it's definitely one of the most tricky times in your lifetime. It's one of the most tricky stages of life, I think, to navigate. And when you're navigating it alone, you can definitely get lost. I also think perhaps there's more access. I don't know, maybe more access to pharmaceuticals, which is actually like the most common form for females in general. So yeah, it could be a variety of different factors.
And do you think that men's mental health and the idea of men committing suicide is on the rise as well? Because I know here in Australia, we talk a lot about men's mental health as almost the underdog because men don't talk about their feelings. So do you find that that's a real issue as well?
Oh, yeah, definitely. So I was just talking to a therapist about this, and he was saying how the amount of female clientele he has compared to the amount of male clientele that like come to his office seeking therapy is like drastically different. There's so many more females that come because it's more of a thing that's seen with females to talk about their emotions, to communicate, to talk about their feelings, to get help, so that's not only seen in the therapy world, it's also seen in just any form of world that requires someone to go get help. So in the physical health world as well, there's actually been many studies done that have shown that women on average live longer than men because they have usually typically stronger social ties. And one of the other contributing factors is that they ask for help. They go see a doctor typically as soon as they notice like symptoms, so there isn't really a stigma or a taboo around going to the doctor and asking for help. Whereas men might just like try to tough it out. And then by the time they go, it's too late. So that's actually a huge contributor to just death rates in general. So it's the same thing on like a much larger scale when it comes to men's mental health and seeking help for that too. Also, just the way that guys communicate in general, we know how, like we know like bro talk and how they communicate, right? It's like, It's very different than girl talk, extremely different. And I don't necessarily think that men should or have to turn into like the way that women talk. I think that there's power to both sides, masculinity, femininity. Like you don't necessarily have to be exactly like one another, but perhaps there's definitely work to be done in figuring out a good healthy way for men to really talk about their emotions and be okay with talking about their emotions and also getting help for it too. So there's a huge stigma.
Yeah, how do you think that we can break that then? Because if we have all these people that aren't seeking help and they're generally the people that need help, how do we get them to reach out?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really great question. It's not always easy. I definitely, I know what it's like to try to get someone, especially someone that you care about, to get therapy, to get help, to help themselves, to, you know, sign up for programs, whatever, you know, and it's not, a lot of times there's a lot of pride involved. And again, that has to do with the taboo, but there's a lot of pride and ego involved in like, I don't need help. Like, what does this mean? If I go to therapy, if I go seek, you know, help for my mentality, it must mean I'm crazy, and I'm not crazy. You know, how can you label me as crazy? Right. So there's that automatic label, that automatic, association with the word mental health or therapy that is really detrimental to people getting help. But, you know, I definitely think persistence is key. If you really care, I have this belief that if you really care about someone, you don't give up on them. You know, granted, we have to take care of ourselves as well, and we have to set, you know, boundaries. And, you know, there is a certain level of toxicity that we have to worry about ourselves, that, you know, we have to watch out for. But with that said, I don't believe in giving up on people that you really care about, as far as, you know, trying to get them the help that they need in order to get better, to survive, to really flourish, to really live the life that they're capable of living. And I would say a good tip to keep in mind is the way that you talk to them. You know, it's not so much as like, you need help, you know, like, go get help because there's something wrong with you need help, or like, you have this addiction and that's really bad and it's a problem, and like, what's wrong with you? And, you know, it's not so much focusing on the negativity as much as giving them hope and inspiration, and having them kind of see the subject of in a way that doesn't have any type of guilt or shame or negativity associated with it, you know? So it's not a, I have to, like, you have to fix yourself type thing, you need fixing. It's more like, you know, have you considered this? Like, this is something that, you know, you can give examples like, this person did this and it really helped them, and you know, this is a really great way to just overall make you feel better, and you'll, you know, and help you like gain tools. And, you know, it's okay that you don't know these tools, you're not born knowing the tools of how to do these certain things. You know, it doesn't make you any weaker that you need to go to rehab to get over an addiction. Like, everyone, you know, has to do that, like, if they're in, you know, the situation that you're in. Like, it's just about not shaming, and you know, saying it in a way that's inspirational, and not being afraid to have these conversations with them, you know. Also coming from a place of, why are you doing it? Why are you telling them this? You know, it's probably because it's coming out of love and concern. You know, you're not, again, you're not saying like, you need to go fix yourself, like, I think you're a bad person, you know, which I think is the way that it comes across, you know, to a lot of people. It's more like, I'm concerned, I care about you, I care about our relationship, I care about, you know, our ability to communicate with each other, or I care about, you know, your health, and, you know, I don't want to lose you, and, you know, sometimes it's really scary. And, you know, having those real, genuine, authentic, caring, loving, compassionate conversations really sometimes makes the world of difference in
Yeah.
helping others get help.
Yeah, wow. What happens if that person that you're trying to help them get help doesn't want to be helped, or doesn't think there's an issue?
Good questions. Yeah, no, absolutely. These are all things that we are faced with. I feel like they're very relatable, because I feel like, you know, we all know people like that. And, you know, the stigma against the taboo is strong. It's strong. Okay. The taboo is very strong. And that's why we are faced with such pushback at the mention of getting help. So you said that, what do you do if they don't think there's something wrong with them? Is that what you said?
Yeah,
So
or if they don't want to
okay,
seek help.
if they don't want to. Well, okay, so first of all, again, if it's a matter of they think there's something wrong with them, then you're probably approaching it the wrong way. don't want to use the word wrong, but I just did. But you know, there's probably a more effective way of approaching it, you know, where they don't feel shamed for it, and they don't feel shamed into getting help, you know, that it's something that they actually want to do for themselves and for the people around them that they care about, you know. Because when one person gets help, it's not just about them. Like, it will have a profound effect on all of their relationships, you know, usually for the better, right? The intention is to have it affect all their relationships for the better. So everyone involved, everyone who cares about them, hopefully will see the effects of the positive effects of them getting help. But if they absolutely simply just do not want to, if they're just like, no, this isn't going to happen, you have to respect that. There's nothing there does come a point where you have to realize, like, you know what, like, this is their choice. There's nothing I can do about it. But I do want to relate that to not giving up on someone. Okay. So when I say that, I mean, like, it's not on you to push them or make sure that they get help, you know, but you don't give up on a relationship with them necessarily, as in, like, if you do get the chance to talk to them about it, you know, if you do see an opportunity in the future to, you know, try to bring the subject up again, or persuade them, or, you know, just express your concerns, it might be worth it to do so. But it's a fine line, okay? It's a very fine line, because you have to respect their boundaries as well. So I can't speak for you. I don't know what your situation is, and I can't speak for other people, because every situation, every relationship is different. So this is where you kind of have to use your own judgments, you know, with it. You know, the last thing that you want to do is push the subject so much that, like, they're turned off forever from it, you know, right? Which could also backfire. But again, as long as they know it's coming from a place of, like, care and good intentions, and not from a place of, like, you're wrong and you need fixing, and, like, you should, you know, you really need to change this, you know. And then, you know, if it's a relationship, there may be a time, if it's getting too toxic for you, you may have to step out of it. It might be something that you have to reassess, and you have to think for yourself, this person is not willing to get help. You know, there's no way that this relationship can work without fixing these issues, without like, you know, progressing and working on subjects together. So when that happens, you know, you really do have to reevaluate and decide for yourself what is the most healthy thing for yourself, you know. And again, I know that I said don't give up on someone, right? So it's two different things, stepping away from a relationship versus, like, totally, when I say don't give up, it means like, okay, this person, you know what, like, I don't care about this person anymore. Like, they're out of my life. Like, I don't care if they live or die. Like, I completely give up. Like, they're hopeless. Like, there's no hope for them, type thing, you know, which I think is a really just negative way of thinking about it. But there is still, you obviously still love that person. You still care about them. So yeah. So I know it's a very convoluted answer, but there's like no set solution to like that'll work for everyone. You know, it really depends on the circumstance, and I can see multiple circumstances in multiple ways. And yeah, some people, if they don't want to get help, like, they don't want to do it for whatever reason.
Yeah, do you think there's a fine line, though, between, I guess, if somebody's telling you that they are self-harming and you can see it, or that they have a plan to commit suicide, that you must step in because their health is at risk?
I'm sorry. In other words, you're saying that, like, if someone is about to harm themselves.
Yeah, or if someone is harming themselves, and instead of, you know, they still see that they don't need help, do you think as the person supporting that person, there's a fine line between having to actually seek help for them because it's at a stage where it's like their life is at risk.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Again, and it also depends on the circumstance, but absolutely. I mean, if you care about this person and they're in the middle of trying to kill themselves, like what would you do? Just, or even, anyone in general, if you see someone on the street and they're in danger, their life is in danger, I think it's almost like human instinct for most of us to step in and help someone who is literally in danger and in need. At least I hope it's human instinct for most people. But yeah, right. But yeah, absolutely. And, and there are plenty of circumstances too. And I have a ton of examples that I know of myself where family members really, really care for someone who has an addiction and it's really difficult to fight, and they don't want help for it because their addiction is that strong. So this kind of reminds me of, I don't know if you've ever seen this show. I don't know if they showed it in Australia, but in the US it was called Intervention, and it was by MTV.
No, I haven't seen it.
No. Okay. So we actually had to watch this for one of my psychology courses, I remember. But it was a reality show about families or friends that had people close to them, someone close to them, and each episode was like focused on a few different subjects, a few different people who had an addiction, right? Usually to drugs or heroin, a really bad addiction, and the family had to come give them an intervention. So that's what's called an intervention. They brought in a psychologist or therapist or a drug counselor, someone who is an expert in whatever that person was dealing with, and they would sit them down and they literally would all talk to them. They wrote them a letter beforehand so they knew exactly what to say, and they would say things like, I really love you, I really care about you, and I want you to get help, and blah blah blah. But the ultimate point was, the intervention was a chance for them to make a choice. Either A, you get help, or B, I cannot keep supporting you. I cannot keep helping you. Yeah. So whether that's the right way or not, that's not for me to say, but I will say that the majority of the cases that I did see, or at least the ones that they did show, the person would want to get help because either A, they realized how much people cared about them. A lot of times it was very, tear jerking. A lot of people were crying, it was like a big, really emotional thing. So they would either realize that, or B, they would realize that if they didn't do this, they literally, like, what would they do? Go be homeless and just be addicted to drugs, So it was a hard choice to make. And usually that's what would happen. However, there were also cases where, they would show it as well, where they chose no. They chose no. They would rather be on the streets living with their addiction. And that was a lifestyle that they chose. And it broke their families' hearts. But ultimately, what are you going to do? What are you going to do about that? So I'm sure, I hope the family checks up on them. I don't know how you couldn't. But, ultimately, yeah, I mean, that's the intervention that happened with the actual psychologist involved. So it's tough. These are tough questions you're asking me. And I appreciate these questions a lot,
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, there's no easy solution. And that's part of the thing with mental health. I think it also contributes to the taboo because people sometimes see this. They see these controversies and these different sides and, different case studies. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And then it contributes to taboo because they're like, well, it's not as cut and dry as giving a heart surgery. It's not as like, oh, you got a cut on your arm, you're supposed to sew it up and put a Band-Aid over it. That's what you do, and that's that. Like, yes, there are steps. Yes, there are things you should do, but there are, like, things that you can follow. And obviously there's entire degrees around this to teach you what to do with your client. But every case is so different, and you don't know always like what's happening with someone's background and their minds and like the choices that they are going to make. So it's complicated. It's not easy.
Yeah. I find it really hard, I guess, because I find these days there's so many organizations and campaigns that are promoting mental health and trying to break the taboo, but yet we still see those statistics that are on the rise. Why do you think that is? That even though we're talking about it probably more than ever, why
Mm-hmm.
are people still looking to suicide as their desired outcome to end their life?
Well, I think the reason why we're talking about it more than ever is because we're seeing that there is such a need for it. Because we've let it go on too long that we haven't talked about it. So now there is an overwhelming need. Like people are finally seeing that, which is a good thing. You know, change is finally happening. Like the change that we've been working so hard for is finally starting to happen. But this is just the very beginning. This is just the very cusp of it. So what you're seeing is the promoter of the change. Like I think it's like the match that is being lit. Like, okay, everyone, like there's a match, like pay attention, like here's the fire. But the fire hasn't started to grow yet, you know, like the actual subject of mental health as a whole, you know, has not like it's not gotten a chance to fully take off yet. And again, the intention is if these little sparks were to work, right? If the real fire was to get burning, then yes, absolutely. The number of suicides should, if we're doing things right, you know, hopefully should and will be going down. And the amount of people, who are openly talking about their mental health should be going up. But that is going up, actually. You know, I think also a part of what you're seeing with why people are talking about it more and more and these, you know, why are there so many organizations is because it's working. Like, I think that's evidence that it's working, that people are starting to realize like, hey, we got to do something about this. Hey, let's talk about this. And more people are jumping on board and they're like more and more open to it. I think if this was like, you know, even 10 years ago, 20 years ago, you would find it much harder to get as much support for an organization like this, much less have a bunch of like movements pop up around this because people just didn't really get it back then,
Yeah.
you know?
How do you know if someone is suicidal? Are there common symptoms that people can look out for?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are signs. There are absolutely signs. So some of the more dire signs to look out for are number one, if they start giving away personal possessions, especially things that are really meaningful to them. So, for example, if they had a childhood stuffed animal that they really liked, that they always slept with, and all of a sudden they came and this was like, you know, your friend, and she's like, hey, I would really like you to have this. That would be a sure sign. Number two, the purchase of weapons, like means to actually, you know, pills or firearms or, just a purchase of tools that could actually aid in the actual act itself. Number three, isolation. So maybe this person used to be really friendly and outgoing, and then all of a sudden you start noticing more and more. So that's more of a symptom of depression, by the way, that they're going into depression is like all of a sudden they're not really talking to anyone. And then, you know, which leads me to the next one, which is a lack of enjoyment of typical activities. So again, that's also a symptom of depression, which leads to suicide. So let's say they used to love playing soccer or love watching their favorite TV show, and all of a sudden it's like they can't get themselves to enjoy any of it. That's, you know, a definite sign that they're going through something, and most likely depression. Um, and um, uh, um, so a big one is actually talking about it, actually saying things, which actually goes over people's heads a lot. But typically, you know, what will happen is someone who is thinking about or contemplating suicide will make remarks around it. Okay. So they may say things that are just a little bit off, that are about, what would it, be like if I was no longer here, or, would it really matter? Like if I died anyway, or, just anything along those lines would definitely be another red flag to pay attention to. So yeah,
And
there
the
are
first
definitely signs.
Yeah, and the first point of contact, if someone's seeing these symptoms, are they to go to an organization like yourself in the United States or an online organization, or call 000 immediately?
Is
Oh,
triple
sorry,
zero your
911 in there.
911?
Sorry, I was like, in my head, I was like 000. I'm like, how you're in the United States? Yeah.
Oh no, that's interesting. I mean, 000 is actually easier to remember, I think.
Yeah.
um, okay, yeah, interesting. So 911's not going to do, at least in the US, I don't know how 000 works in Australia, but in the US, 911 is for emergencies only, critical emergencies. So if you think someone's just like, contemplating it or making a plan for it, oh, by the way, that's another obvious sign, is if they actually start to make a plan to go through with it, right? But if it's just in those stages, then 911's not going to do anything, because there's no actual life-threatening emergency. That's for emergencies only. Now, if that person is actually about to do the act, then absolutely, that's when you would call 911 or 000. So I would say, yeah, getting them exposed to any type of information, to organizations, resources, anyone that would help, pointing them to websites, having them, look at it themselves, looking at it with them, just getting them exposed to the possibility and the idea of getting help, and letting them know, like, hey, there are resources out there, and there are a ton of resources, like which ones, sound appealing to you, like, oh, let's look at this one, that one. So that's a great thing that you can do with that person. Also making sure that they are seeing a therapist, so getting them help, so having them talk to a therapist about it. The therapist may or may not refer them to a psychiatrist. They may or may not need to go on medication, depending on where they are at in the stage of their depression, but therapy is absolutely 100%. If someone is at that stage, you would want them to get therapy. A lot of people also talk about suicide hotlines. So that's also a great way. Although, I have heard sometimes, unfortunately, like, you get put on hold or whatever, so I've heard good and bads of that, but there are a lot of different suicide hotlines out there. There's not just one, at least in the US. So it's always, again, better to talk to someone than not talk to someone. And these people have some training as far as, how to talk to someone, and how to try to get them to seek help and point them to resources of the next place to go. So yeah, so that's what you would do.
Wow. Do you have any advice for a person, whether it's a friend or a parent, that is seeing symptoms or suicidal thoughts in a person that they care about? What advice can you offer to that person?
Well, it can be very scary. I definitely know it can be very scary, and it's sad. It's sad, and it's a heavy load to carry. So I would say, don't get disheartened. Know that there are things that this person that you care about can do. Know that they can get better. Have, again, hope. You have to hold on to the hope and the belief that this person can get better, and be supportive of them. Encourage them to talk about it. So a lot of times what happens is, a parent will get scared, and they'll think that if they push the subject, it's going to make it worse. And, then something really bad is going to happen, or they're going to have pushback. They're going to get angry at them. It's going to ruin their relationship, or whatever's going on. And the majority of the cases is no, actually, it's quite opposite. The more you talk about it, the more you encourage someone who is going through it to talk about it, the more appreciative they'll actually be about it, and the more you'll be able to help them. So the key is to have open conversations about this, not be afraid of having these conversations. And when you're having a conversation, that also means listen, so it also means to the parents, listen to what your child is saying. like really be empathetic, not just sympathetic, I feel bad for you, but empathetic, meaning like putting yourself in their shoes and really trying to understand what they're going through and where they're coming from. And not belittling them and not like parenting them every step of the way, you know? So again, it's the support that you want to provide and the empathy, and then walk with them to get help, you know? Be there for them and get them the help that they deserve and need to get better. And it's going to be a process. It's not an overnight thing. It's not a, oh, throw them in rehab for 3 days or 3 months type thing. It's not like that. You know, people that have gone through depression, especially severe depression, sometimes it can be a life going journey, you know, or a cycle that keeps coming back. So, you know, but just know that there are tools that will help, and that they do need these tools, and they need you to be there for them.
Wow, that's amazing advice. And I want to take time now just to thank you so much for spending the afternoon with me today. I really, really appreciate it. And all that you're doing is phenomenal. And you're really making a difference in the United States. And you've made an impact on me today. So I am very appreciative of your time. And where can we find you? Where can we find Breaking Taboo?
Okay, well, Breaking Taboo, if you go on our website, www.breaking-taboo.org. So there's a dash there, breaking-taboo.org. That's our website. And we have a ton of resources, always coming out with articles around mental health and psychology, and like ton of stuff there for you to look at. You can also find us on social media. We're really active on social media. So you can look us up on Instagram. We actually have quite a large following from Australia, actually. So lots of people in Australia follow us, as well as the UK and the United States, and all over the world. But yeah, so it's under Breaking Taboo is our handle. We're also Breaking Taboo on TikTok, as well as Facebook. And then our Twitter handle is breaking_taboo, because we can't figure out who actually has Breaking Taboo, but our Twitter is breaking_taboo. So those are all the places that you can follow us for daily inspiration and, you know, mental health advice and just feel good stuff, as well as education around these topics. And we do all sorts of topics all the time. So yeah.
That's phenomenal. And there's great content on there. And I just want to send out to anyone out there who thinks that they have suicidal thoughts, or a loved one is showing symptoms or signs of that you can get help. As Serena mentioned, you can get help, and it's just about accessing that help. I know here in Australia we have the Kids Helpline, Beyond Blue, the Black Dog Institute, Inside Out, the Butterfly Foundation. So go out there and seek resources to get help, because help and recovery is possible. So thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you everyone out there for joining us for another Secret Sunday session, and we'll catch you next time.